Coming to you from Music City, Nashville, Tennessee, this is the Quinn Spinn. Hey now, and welcome once again, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all, to a brand new edition of The Quinn Spinn. I'm your host, Quinn. I'm back here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, and more for another rousing and riveting installment of the official podcast of Underground Music Collective. You just heard Revel 9's All I Become. That's been our opening theme song here at the Quinn Spinn since the great year of 2014, and it will be until the very end of days. And we have a big show today. I have the privilege of welcoming Candy Tolentino to the program today. And Candy is a serial entrepreneur. She is a business coach. She hosts her own podcast called EEAZE. It's spelled EEAZE, where she shares stories, insights, perspectives on the entrepreneurial journey, and just some world-class stuff today in this conversation. Candy is doing so much to inspire and empower entrepreneurs, creatives, and that includes you, musicians listening, watching, wherever you're consuming this. So this is an important conversation. It's one not to miss, so don't miss it. It's coming right now. All right, everyone. As promised, I am here on a very special edition of the Quinn Spinn with Candy Tolentino. Candy is the host of the EEAZE podcast. She has so many amazing resources on her website, too, for entrepreneurs looking for things like getting funding, looking for things like overcoming their fears around asking those tough questions, right? And she is about to launch a business coaching program as well. She hosts a speaker summit called the Prosperity Summit. There's so much to dive into here. So first of all, Candy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super thrilled to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So excited for this conversation. I feel like everyone's going to learn a lot, including me here today. But before we dive into all the nuts and bolts, I ask every guest of the show 3 standard questions. Those 3 questions are: who are you? What are your passions? And why on earth would you want to come on the Quinn Spinn?
Well, thank you for asking me that, especially because I find in modern life, we don't talk about, and we're not usually given permission, if you will, to speak openly about our passions. And I'm actually passionate about helping people tune into their passions and their purpose for being here, hence the summit that I just hosted that you mentioned, my Passion, Purpose, Prosperity Summit. So I'm Candy Tolentino. I'm host of the EEAZE podcast. I'm also a 20-plus year, aging myself, serial entrepreneur. And I also consider myself a citizen of the world. I'm obsessed with travel. I'm obsessed with health and wellness and healthy living. I turned that passion into my first business. Mm-hmm. And what was the third question? What else can I tell you?
Why on earth would you want to come on this show of all the shows?
I love the Quinn Spinn. I love that you dive into pop culture, into musical expression, and into people talking about what in the world it is we're doing here and how we can express our art, our authenticity, our passions, and make the world a better place. So why not?
That's exactly what we're here to do. Great answer, Candy. Great answer. We're off to a great start. And of course, what we're here to do is informed by our formative experiences, you know, the things that we experience growing up. And for you, you've always kind of labeled yourself as a self-proclaimed oddball underdog. You had a troubled childhood in the inner city, as you've mentioned on your website, and I'm sure elsewhere. So take us through your formative experiences and how you found a way to dream beyond your early circumstances to pursue your purpose.
Aw, so true. And thank you for doing your research and even calling upon my oddball upbringing. So yeah, I would often say that growing up, I was walking paradox, because here I was this girl who from the outside world was perceived as being rich because my mother was a judge and my father was a doctor, and we were like the Huxtables. So we were perceived as rich, but really we were in actuality like kind of poor. Mm-hmm. Well, rich and poor at the same time. And I say I'm old and young, and I'm like, I don't have an island. I have to create my own island. Mm-hmm. I'm Black, but I have a name that sounds totally Italian, right? Mm-hmm. My name is Candida Francesca Tolentino, my full name. I came from the city, a very, very urban, gritty, very charged area, but I'm like a soft girl who is intimidated easily, but not intimidated by anything at the same time. So I've just lived a strange life full of all of these paradoxes and opposites and coincidences. And it's been a really good earth school for me in that way.
I think we're all paradoxes in our way. We all we wear many hats, we fit many roles, depending on our experiences, depending on how those experiences show up and inform our journeys in that present moment, right? We all have those things that we've been through that cause us to react a certain way, to a certain circumstance or stimulus, right? And, it's interesting because I think in a lot of like guru culture, entrepreneur culture, like there's this idea that like you have to just like present yourself as perfect and everything. And you like, listen to me, I'm the authority on everything. I've never had a problem in my life. Whereas we all have had our problems, which inform our journeys, which inform how we show up and the impact that we want to have.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say I am like first in line of the Misfits Club, because I grew up, speaking about my upbringing and growing up in the inner city, I grew up in a very rough place where everybody had angst and probably everybody felt like they didn't fit in, or everybody wished they could be living in a universe that was different than it was. And so I do think early on that groomed me for looking outside the box and having to look beyond my comfort zone to even survive, much less fit in, because I didn't fit in. I'm from New Jersey. I was born and raised, and listen to me, right? You do, you get it. That's right. We're both from Jersey, but I don't sound like it. And so I was very much made fun of in Jersey City, where I grew up in the inner city, because I didn't fit in. I never talked like this. I never really spoke with the Jersey colloquialisms, but most of my friends did, and they thought I was an oddball. So that was initially a big, I guess, barrier, if you will, that I was up against. And also being a Black person in always like predominantly white schools, or, I was brought up Catholic, for instance, and went to Catholic school. And there was the expectation, like I said, that we were well off, but people didn't know my family had a lot of dysfunction, a lot of secrets. My father wasn't paying, even though my parents were married and they were together since they were 12 and 13, my father stopped paying for my school tuition and supporting my sister and I when I was in third grade, 7 years old. So my mom was struggling to pay all the bills by herself, as if she was a single mother, but she was married to like the doctor, of the town. So really, really strange upbringing. Truth is stranger than fiction. I believe that. And so early on, I had to learn to fight while also learning to keep up appearances, while also trying to fulfill expectations of doing well in school and, walking a certain walk and being a certain way. But the one thing I never had any role model for, or any roadmap, if you will, was entrepreneurship. Like my biggest passion in life was the thing that I knew the least about. So growing up, I learned how to fight, right? And I learned how to ride the subway, and I learned how to listen to the nuns in school and not get in trouble. But when it came to trying to give birth to an idea, to manifest something that there was a demand for, but no supply, I had no idea. And I had to learn the hard way, which is something that I currently try to help entrepreneurs avoid doing, learning the hard way.
So where did those first ideas come from, and what were they? And when did you realize that you could turn them into reality?
Thank you for asking. Okay, the first business idea I ever had is still something not actualized to this day, darn it. I was about 14 years old when I became vegetarian. So a lot of my early experience with entrepreneurship had to do with a need that I personally had that wasn't being fulfilled. And I wanted to find really cute shoes, but that weren't leather. As a vegetarian, right? I didn't want to wear animals. And they're like, only back in the day, pleather shoes, fake leather shoes, were really cheap, and they would fall apart quickly, and they were a hot mess. Not usually too cute either. And so I remember being about 14 and asking my father, I want to start a shoe business. Like, what should I do? And he just gave me the worst advice you could give anyone, which is basically like, why try it? It would be too hard. You'd have to first get a prototype, he said, which I don't even believe is true, but you'd have to get a prototype and you have to sell it to a store and it just would be too hard. So why even go for it? And I was like, okay. So I got discouraged because I didn't know how to actualize that first idea. But fast forward about 8 years or so, at that point, I had transitioned to becoming vegan. And my biggest challenge then was I became vegan for health reasons, but I absolutely hated health food. I did not want to eat anything that tasted like tree bark or wheatgrass. That was not my jam, right? I was used to living on pizza and French fries and bagels and donuts. So you can see why I was sick, right? Eating all junk food like that. But I didn't know what to do to save my life when I was getting sick all the time and felt like I was dying and I could barely get out of bed, but yet healthy food and vegan food tasted like cardboard to me. And that was a problem.
Right.
So I went about finding a solution to that problem. And that's how I launched my first business.
So one thing I want to come back to is you mentioned, this idea of having to prototype things and, not having the resources available, that kind of thing, or that perception that people have of like, it'll be too hard. It'll be too this, it'll be too that. So how did you push past that? Because I think a lot of us, when we start our journeys, like we do have those people that poke holes in the argument, so to speak, that are there to be like, oh, well, you didn't consider this and this is why it's not going to work. So how did you push past that external resistance that you received to still find ways forward?
Yeah, really good question, because it's very relevant for aspiring entrepreneurs now. There will always be naysayers. There will always be people who think you're crazy, and there will be people who can't envision it, so they can't contribute to your vision because they can't see it. At the time, when I was 14, I didn't have the tools or resources to push past it. I just got discouraged and was like, and left a good idea on the table. I didn't have help. I didn't have funding. I didn't have any business partners. I only had a parent who was saying, that would be too hard. I don't think so. But when I got some independence, and once I was in my early 20s and I had a similar idea, that one of those ideas, like sometimes you get that burning feeling in the night where you're on to something and you can't suppress the idea. That's usually a sign it's a good one.
Gets you out of bed.
Right?
Gets you out of bed.
Get you out of bed. And I literally had a dream and a name came to me, Earth Cafe, where food lives. And I love a good double entendre because the where food lives part, the tagline was a double entendre because I was making living food. Right. And so that name came to me in a dream. And I was like, I woke up and thought, I'm onto something. I have no idea how to do this. Right. I don't even know how it's done, but now I'm going to figure it out. I was in my early 20s and I thought, I don't have the resources, but how do I get the resources? And so I just started grassrootsing, like a grassroots approach to launching a business. I didn't even know it was illegal to make desserts out of your home kitchen at the time, but I just started getting cookbooks. I went to raw culinary school. Like as soon as I learned that there was this thing that was mysterious to me, I'd never heard of raw vegan food. What is that? But that it had the potential to heal people of maladies and that there wasn't enough of it that tasted really good. I saw a problem, I saw a solution, and I was determined to bridge the gap between the two. So again, if it meant me buying 20 cookbooks, that's where I started. Just buying cookbooks and experimenting in my own kitchen. Then I took a crash course at a raw culinary school where I learned to at least physically make the food that I was interested in, because I didn't even know how to boil water to make spaghetti at the time. Imagine this, I'm about to open a dessert company, which would eventually go national and make 7 figures its first year in sales, and I didn't know how to boil water. I knew nothing, but I knew that I was onto a really good idea. And I had drive and I had vision. So I wasn't going to rest until I figured it out. And I literally figured it out as I was doing it, which is kind of a dangerous thing to do, but often a requisite thing to do in business. Like figure it out. I got the contracts with Whole Foods and then figured out how I was going to fulfill it. I
Yeah.
got the contracts and then figured out how I was going to package the dessert that I was making and get the stickers made and the barcodes and the distribution and all the other parts. I just started out just making a really good product and getting people to taste it and getting them on board. And so I think you can distill it down to bite-sized chunks. If you have an idea, but you don't know how to manifest it, okay, start at the beginning, like Stephen Covey says, or start with the end in mind. I knew I wanted a successful dessert in stores. How do I get there? Okay, well, let's start just with the dessert. Even if you don't know how you're going to package it,
Right.
who's going to distribute it, start with the idea and how to manufacture that and then break it down. That's what I did.
Yeah. And I think there is an element of ready, fire, aim to all of our entrepreneurial journeys, right? Because there are things that are going to come up that you've never experienced before, that maybe you weren't expecting, that maybe you couldn't have expected, right? As you're progressing and as things are growing, and I think that's a really good case study for the fact that you just have to start somewhere, right? You just have to get going, because if you're waiting and waiting and waiting until you're ready, you're never going to be ready. If you're waiting to release that product, if you're waiting to get that idea out into the world, like, you're going to be waiting forever, because there's never a perfect moment. You're never going to know everything you need to know, because so much of that, so many of those lessons come along the way. They come from trying something. They come from falling on your face sometimes, but they also come from trying something, having it work, and going in that direction, doing more of that, whatever that thing was that worked. Like, let's do more of that, but you have to learn and you have to start somewhere. You have to launch. And as those roads become available to you, as those doors open, you have to step through them, see what's there, and see how you need to respond to those situations.
Absolutely. I love what you said, and I second that. I just decided to jump both feet in full commitment right into the deep end of the pool and learned how to swim along the way. So if anyone's listening and they're on the fence about launching something that is really, they know in their cells, they know in their heart that this is part of their purpose and they're passionate about it, you have to do it. You have to get off the fence.
Absolutely. Because I think too, if you don't do that, then the consequence of that is it's still going to live inside you. If you know what your purpose is intrinsically, if you feel that in your gut and you don't find some way to express that, it's going to live inside you. And the longer it goes unexpressed, the more regret you're going to have, the more resentful you're going to become, the more that's going to be left unspoken, and at the end of the line, would you rather have tried those things? And would you rather have put it all on the table? Or would you rather just go to your final resting place with all these things still inside you? I mean, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's a scary leap to take a lot of the time, because there are things you don't know. There is judgment you're going to have to endure. There are going to be tough moments, plenty of them, times where you fail, times where you feel like the world's caving in, but there's also going to be plenty of beauty and joy and triumph in that journey. And it all comes together to help us grow and prosper. And you, of course, as an entrepreneur who's been in the game for a while, are now helping other folks prosper. And you just wrapped up a few weeks ago your most recent summit. And I want to give you a chance to speak to the concept of the Prosperity Summit and what people can expect. Kind of take us through it.
Sure. And I'll share a little bit of my background and a story that I actually opened the summit with. So again, the name was Passion, Purpose, Prosperity Summit. And I had some amazing guests, people who have won Emmys. I had 3 different Emmy winners on the show, including Rhonda Britton. She's considered the mother of life coaching in this country, because she was literally one of the first 5 people worldwide to start offering life coaching 30 plus years ago. And she's had her own show on NBC, and she's been on Oprah several times, and Larry King Live, and, big accolades like that. And I've got entrepreneurs who are successful in the podcasting space, like yourself. I had entrepreneurs who just hit the speaking circuit and they make a living doing that. Real estate investors, but all people who have really decided to live intentionally and to put their purpose into action. And I opened the summit talking about some seminal moments in my life where I realized it's do or die. And I love the point that you just made where you said, when you jump in with both feet before you're ready to do something, like it's going to be painful at points. It's going to be challenging, but life is going to be painful and challenging no matter what anyway. So you might as well take on challenges, being in a place where you're expressing your true purpose versus compromising it and dealing with pain and challenges anyway. So I mentioned how I went on this reality show, this business reality show. This was my first foray into being up close and personal with a really successful business person. So the show was called The Billionaire, The Rebel Billionaire, and it was featuring Richard Branson, and he took 16 entrepreneurs on this worldwide, like ridiculous journey to see who wouldn't crack under Branson-like pressure. I cracked many times. I can tell you that. It was such a crazy experience because as we were doing it, we never knew where in the world we'd land next. They just told us to pack for all 4 seasons, and we didn't know how long this was going to last. We didn't know when we'd go home. We didn't have a choice of when we could call home. We couldn't even talk with anybody else in the world, including the crew members, besides our castmates, like on this reality show. So it was a lot of psychological and emotional pressure. We were literally doing things every day that I felt were positively life-threatening. And I almost, to my point, I literally almost drowned on the Zambezi River in Zimbabwe, which was, I didn't even know until after, is infested with eels and alligators. So they had us go rafting on level 5 rapids, and we capsized on the first wave we hit, and I got pulled under and almost drowned. Crazy story. But so we had a lot of stunts like that, and I was getting hurt all the time. And in one of my final stunts, this is a pivotal moment of my life where I realized, wow, there is something in giving total commitment to an idea or to a concept that gives you power and energy and the ability to do things beyond your normal control, to even manifest miracles, if you will. So in this experience, I almost drowned. I went plummeting over 750 feet, which is 3 times taller than the world's tallest bungee jump on this challenge they had us do. I bruised my ribs, like I was injured the whole time. And I had this final stunt where we had to climb a rope ladder, let's say 30 some odd feet up. Rope ladders are really, really hard and exhausting to climb because you don't have tension. And
Right.
so you're using your own, all of the weight of your body to kind of pull you up. It's hard. It was very hard for me. And then we had to climb a regular ladder, and we're up at least maybe 50, 60 feet off the ground. And we had to walk on a really tiny wire, 30 feet across, a tiny, less than a centimeter wide wire, while we're holding on to each other. And if one person fell or wobbled, you both would instantly fall. So it was an impossible task. And they even told us that the stunt people had to attempt this 13 times before they could make it across even once. And so when I heard that, I was like, great, they're giving us another impossible task. Like, why are we even doing this? It's exhausting. To climb a rope ladder, it took like all the energy out of me, that alone for 30 feet. And then climb even higher and then get on a platform and face someone whose body weight is twice your size, which makes it almost impossible to stand up without on a tiny wire without shaking and falling. So we tried the first time. They said they would give us three tries before elimination. So we tried the first time. We instantly fell as soon as we stood on the wires. It's me and a guy who's twice my weight. I'm half his size. We fell, and I thought, I give up. I'm not even going to do this again. Why would I attempt this? This isn't about business. Like, how is walking on a wire, exhausting myself, climbing up a rope ladder, how is any of this going to make me a better entrepreneur? It's not. I'm good. I'm done. I've got bruised ribs, right? Almost drowned 2 weeks ago. I'm good. And my partner in this, his name is Gabe. Gabe said, well, let's just give it one more try. Because we were both exhausted, and we were both, and when you fell, like, you fell hard. It's scary to fall and go plummeting 50 feet in the air. Like the whole thing was just treacherous. But Gabe said, oh, we're here. Let's try. And I said, I don't want to. No, I'm like over this. I was really frustrated. On reality TV, they do everything they can too to keep you in a high state of like just being in your nervous system activation, because that leads to drama, right? And they need drama. So we were all this. But I decided, fine, I let him convince me. Let's try again. And I was pissed. I'm climbing the rope ladder to do it the second time. And I'm so annoyed. Let's just get this over with, I thought. And then a new thought entered my mind. And that thought was, wait a second. I'm already doing this, so I might as well commit. What will happen if I commit? I'm at least going to show them. Last time we went 1 foot before we dropped. Maybe I can make it 3 feet. I'm just going to show them what I'm made of. The heck with it. I'm going to commit. And so I looked at Gabe and he looked at me, and we both had just this look of total resolve and commitment on our faces. And he looked at me like, I got you. And I looked at him like, I've got you back. Let's go. And so we get on this rope ladder. We're both shaking. We have to engage every single muscle in our bodies to even stand up, suspended on a tiny, tiny wire while holding on to each other. We're trying to build a wall between our hands to give us something for resistance so we wouldn't instantly fall. And we walk a few inches and we don't fall. And we're like, okay, we're shaking. Every part of our body is shaking, but we haven't fallen yet. Somehow we're holding on. We're keeping each other from falling. And we go. We made it 2 feet. We made it 3 feet. I couldn't believe it. That was my goal. I'll be darned, 5 feet, 10 feet. We made it across 30 feet to the other platform, and we both were astonished. The stunt people were astonished. There were hundreds of people looking on, mind you. The crowd was astonished because, again, they let us know even the stunt people who are trained, who do this for a living, had to try it 13 times before they could make it across. So what was the moral of this whole thing? I realized, as Tony Robbins often says, if you want to take the island, you've got to burn the boats. In other words, if you really want to bring something about that seems almost impossible, you have to commit with no doubt, with no wavering, with unwavering focus. When you commit, forces in the universe rise up and magnify your own personal efforts. And I learned that in that day. So it's so interesting. I learned a business lesson that wasn't about business at all, but that has completely changed the way I do business ever since. Like, you've got to commit wholeheartedly, burn the boats, no way out. Yeah. No way but forward. And then miracles really tend to happen.
That resonates deeply, because I'm on a similar journey right now, in my own world, with UMC, with the show, with everything under this Underground Music Collective umbrella. I took the leap from corporate America for good, come hell or high water, for good at the beginning of 2021. I left the corporate world, and it has been the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life, because one thing it teaches you, and not just in a professional sense, is everything you need to know about yourself, the holes in your game, how you need to address them to carry forward and build the thing you want to build. But to your point, it is little step by little step by little step by little step until you're on the other end, on this other proverbial platform, on the other side of this rope ladder, right? And there's no easy way to get there. But to your point, you have to fully commit to it. You have to go all in, because if you don't, and you're playing at half speed, and look, I mean, we've all got to make a living. I'm not saying that. Don't at me in the comments, anybody, but like, there's going to come a certain point where if you are going to build the thing you're going to build, you have to leave safety. You have to leave safety, whether that's your day job, whatever that is, like, you have to venture out from it, because eventually it's going to get to a point where, even though it's helping fund you, it's holding you back from fully focusing your energy and attention on what you're building. And not to say things are going to be easy for you when you do it, because they're not. And I always say, and this is, one of the things I say all the time on the show, if, people who tell you that this is easy are either naive or trying to sell you something. It is a journey. It's called the creative journey, the business journey, for a reason. but you have to go on that journey and you've got to take that first step. And I think, it's interesting that you say like, you didn't see how that how that challenge was related to business, but then it informed everything, about the way you do business going forward, because it's often when we're going through things, we don't see the purpose. We don't see the point until afterwards we look back. It's like, wow, I'm glad I went through that thing. I'm glad I did that because I have a whole new understanding for how that can apply to this challenge that's coming up. Or when you meet a new one, like, hey, I've been here before. As a matter of fact, I've been through worse. I went through that thing, like there's so much to be learned from all these little events that occur on our journey, even if they don't seem related or at least don't seem like they make much sense at the time.
Yes, so true. But as you mentioned, it really changed my whole perspective in business and in life. And I know if I'm halfway committed to something, but I know what it feels like versus when I am like, by any means necessary, when I'm channeling like Malcolm X, like no matter what, I will complete this task. When I give that level of commitment, you best believe it is done, and it's done well.
Yeah, there's something about being in a must-win situation, that will test your mettle, and like I said, that resonates for me right now because I'm in one right now. I have fully committed to building this thing, doing whatever I need to do, cobbling together whatever resources I have to eventually get to the point where UMC has a physical headquarters in Nashville. Like I have the date in my calendar, August 17th, 2028. And we're dedicating Mom's Basement Studios that day because that was what we called my parents' basement when we started this podcast 10 years ago.
I love it.
But to get there, it sounds all romantic, right? But like what I'm going to have to do between now and then and what we're going to have to do, because it's not just me now. It's never going to be just me going forward. Like it's going to have to be this incredible, consistent effort. And you have to build your team. You have to have the right people around you. You have to have the right content coming in. You have to treat your body right. Like there's so many components that go into leveling up, and it's not just, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start a business and I'm going to make a lot of money. No, you have to get everything about your life in order. And how in order you have that is going to dictate how far you're going to go.
I love that. So insightful that you're aware of that and that your outer world is a reflection of your inner world.
Mm-hmm. I've become a big proponent of protecting your energy, especially over the past year. Especially if you go back and listen to old episodes, you'll know that it's such a huge piece of the puzzle. One other thing I do want to make sure we touch on, though, is the EEAZE podcast. And
yes.
So it's the Idea into Action podcast for aspiring entrepreneurs. And obviously, with everything else we've talked about, it fits right into your mission. It fits right into this whole ecosystem of impact, inspiration that you're putting out into the world. So tell us a little bit about the podcast and what we can expect.
Yes. Thank you so much for asking that. So here's the deal. As I mentioned, I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. I don't know anything different. I've never had a boss in my entire adult life. And I realized that I have stumbled upon some really valuable lessons and ways of doing business that I didn't even know would fundamentally change my life and create opportunity for me, create financial freedom, create the ability to travel, create the ability to connect with so many other people and to feel that I was living a purpose-driven life. And when I thought about it, I thought, why don't I help other entrepreneurs do the same thing? Because it's just maybe odd that I've had the experience of launching 3 different businesses, all that grossed 6 figures, and the dessert business, 7 figures in the first year. And I thought, let me talk about the fundamental principles that enabled me to do that. And I've had losses, like any serial entrepreneur you speak to, I've had losses in business too. Like we don't need to talk about that spa that I opened up right before the pandemic at the end of 2019. We don't need to talk about that, or the dating site, marrymealready.com, that then got hacked and shut down without even my knowledge. So I've had wins and losses, but that particular formula I find to be very interesting. And I think it's something a lot of entrepreneurs are hungry for. Like, how do we transition from working a corporate job with a safety net, or having an idea, bringing it to market and earning at least six figures the first year, hopefully more, but enough to be financially solvent and to have at least a sense of financial freedom and to have enough revenue to keep going. So
Right.
I'm fascinated by asking and answering that question. And that's what I explore on the podcast, including fundamentals that help you know you've got a winning idea and that can help you, no matter what your business is, gross a certain amount that can keep you afloat and that can always help you to remain competitive.
And I think the financial solvency portion of this is really important, especially for any musicians or artists listening, because, you know, there's a whole like badge of honor that sometimes that people wear is like, oh, I'm a starving artist. I'll never sell out. I don't want this to be about the money. If you want to have the impact you have to have the money to reach people to have that impact. You have to treat your music like a business. If you're doing it, you know, if you're doing art for art's sake, like nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want to do. Right.
Yes. And that's a hobby.
Right. Right. But if you're trying to grow your platform, you know, to the point where it impacts millions, to the point where you are on the level of a Taylor Swift selling out stadiums 3 nights in a row all over the country, you know, to where you can have your own eras tour where you're taking people through your entire creative journey so far. It comes down to, how am I treating this like a business? And how am I first making sure my needs are met so that I can give, and I'm not pouring from this empty cup, because I see it all the time. And I've been on this merry-go-round myself, you know, at different stages where it's like, I just want to give and give and give and give and give. And it's not about the money, and it's not about this, it's not about that. No, it should be about your purpose. It should be about serving, but serve in a way that fills your cup so you can serve more and serve better. Because if you don't do that, you're just going to be on this merry-go-round with everyone else, complaining they don't have money, complaining that it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, complaining that it feels stuck. You've got to get yourself unstuck, and you've got to find ways to make it work for you and to make it solvent if you want to have that impact.
Absolutely. And you got to eat.
That too. Eating is good. Eating is good. And again, goes back to that point of what you put in your body also factors in here too. So if you're eating junk just because it's cheap, well, that's going to catch up to you.
Absolutely.
Know? And you're
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say your habits too. You know, if you're going out, you're staying out to 2 a.m, you know, and waking up with a sabotage Sunday, which again, I've been guilty of. I think we all have at one point or another. Like, that adds up. Like, how many sabotage Sundays have you lost because you were hungover? And how many of those Sundays could you have used to get a workout in, to meal prep for the week, to work on your craft? You know, it all comes down to priorities, and also what you're putting in. That's going to factor into what you're getting out of it.
Absolutely. You know, I can't even fathom the idea of going to war, if you will, because being an entrepreneur is like you're battling in the streets, okay? Trying to get known, seen, heard, have impact. So I can't imagine going to war without being armored.
Right.
And without being intentional. And so, yeah, being hungover, that would never be a negotiable for me. It just isn't.
Yeah.
Or not giving like I'm thinking about my business ideas, and I'm thinking about ways to improve or ways to have better reach around the clock, literally all of the time. That's one of the few areas of my life where I don't have balance. I am thinking, but the business ideas I have are something so meaningful to me, it's quite easy to obsess over them. And I do think that that's part of the criteria of anything you're going to invest your money, your energy, your focus behind, that it should be something that is easy for you to obsess over. And so I talk about things like this on the podcast, like the minimum MVC, I call it minimum viable criteria for any idea, is that you obsess over it and that it is life-changing, that it can literally change people's lives. And if your bar is that high, you've absolutely got a winning formula. Because if you know you have something that can change people's lives, that gives you the prowess the boldness that it takes, because it's going to take a lot of boldness and conviction to go knock on anyone's door and to knock down doors to create an opening for yourself. But if you know you have something, like if you had the cure to cancer, would you keep it to yourself? Or would it be easy to go around town talking about that constantly, or selling it, or sharing it? And so I feel like if you have a business idea, that's one of the tips I always give to entrepreneurs. You've got to look at it and feel about it like it is the cure to cancer.
Mm-hmm.
When I launched my first business, I knew like this is the answer. And I wasn't shy, or I mentioned, because of my background, I can easily be intimidated in certain settings. But when you have conviction that you've created something that is literally can improve people's lives, there's no reason to be intimidated. It would be intimidating to not share it.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say?
Fear does factor in for a lot of people, though, whether that's fear of judgment, whether that's fear of failure, fear of success. We feel those fears, and I don't think they ever really go away, right? Like they're there. It's just you learn how to manage them better. So how do you...
we all have fear. It's like similarly, you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you react to it.
Yeah.
So I think that when I first, for instance, picked up the phone to call Whole Foods, and I had barely been in business for 2 months, and I didn't even know what net weight meant or where to even go for barcodes. I think there was I think I had some fear about, what if I say the wrong thing? What if they don't like, what if, but I was able to quiet those gremlins, right? That mind chatter that we all have, by having such conviction in what I was offering. Like I knew I was making a dessert that had every ingredient had a healing property. Like how USP can you get? Unique selling proposition, right? Like how differentiated can you get? Ask yourself that question. And when you know you have a very strong point of differentiation, to me, it helps you overcome the fear, because I knew they literally didn't have anything like what I was offering, and what I was offering was really needed. So that gave me enough confidence to overcome the fear and to really speak with bold confidence about why they should give me a meeting, and why in 5 minutes I was going to change their lives and mine. And it worked.
Getting down to that mission, vision, and values, and how that's reflected in your product, like it all comes down to why you're doing it, what the benefits are, what the need you're fulfilling is, like you said. And so important to identify that, because I think, especially in the creative space, a lot of people just need an outlet. A lot of people just like, I just want to make music. But why? Who do you want to impact? Who do you want to reach? How do you want to make the world around you better through what you do?
Such a good point. And I think it's important for creatives, entrepreneurs, artists in general, to tap into your why every single day. Every single day. And to really define your why. Write yourself a love letter about, what is my why? Like, what is my purpose? Why do I want to make music, paint paintings, create a bookstore, like whatever? What is the why? How does that heal your soul? How does it speak to your soul? And when you are aligned with that why, that's another way to become unstoppable.
Absolutely. So much amazing insight here. I know we are coming up on time. Of course, want to respect your time, but want to touch briefly on the coaching program that you're launching and what people can expect from that, what your philosophy is, without giving too much away. Tell us about it.
Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you. So I'm on a mission to help aspiring entrepreneurs get into business and align with their passions. And so that's what this coaching offering is going to be all about. It'll be launched sometime this coming July. I'm doing everything right now to make it the most phenomenal package imaginable. And I will be pouring into the coaching package everything I've learned from 20 plus years of being in business, and everything I've learned from 20 plus years of studying metaphysical thought, Eastern philosophy, and learning how to be aligned with not only one's purpose, but with the current moment and understanding the path that we're all on and how to accept and surrender the things we can't change and embrace wholeheartedly the things we can. So it will be a combination, a hybridized approach, if you will, of life coaching with business coaching, but specifically to help aspiring entrepreneurs launch brands that have impact and revenue that will completely change people's lives.
I love that, because life informs business and business informs life. And you can't, especially in this day and age, like, especially if you're a creative, they're so interconnected. You know, the philosophy growing up was always, you got to separate business from personal. And yeah, that's true to a degree, but there's a certain level to which you cannot do it, because the way you show up for life informs how you show up for business and vice versa. So I love that you're taking this holistic approach in developing your program. Really excited to learn more. And another question on coaching real quick. So if somebody feels called to coaching, like they want to get into coaching themselves, what do you think they need to know, or what would be helpful to them to get started on their journey?
Thank you for asking that, because I really want to dispel some myths here. A lot of people think they're intimidated to launch a coaching business because they think, well, I don't have a certification, or maybe they don't have 20 years experience in one thing, but the experience they do have would be really valuable to another person. So I want to dispel the myth that you have to have a college degree or a higher learning degree or some kind of certification to be a valuable coach to someone else. For instance, I'm a mom, right? And I don't know anything about photography. And one of the entrepreneurs who I had on my show that we were just talking about, the Prosperity Summit, she started her first online course because she was just trying to create passive income for herself. So she started a course on photography for moms. She was never a professional photographer. She's certainly not a well-known photographer, but she's a hobby photographer, and she knows a lot about hobby photography when it comes to shooting children. A lot more than I know, a lot more than other moms know. So number one, because she launched and she had a very specific niche, she did so well. She sold this course and made six figures just from the one course alone her first year. Now, if she had just done a broad photography course, she would have been competing with everybody and their dog in the photography space. But because she made it very niche specific, photography for moms, that set her apart, number one. And number two, it took away the requirement that she be the most world-renowned expert to teach. No, she just needed to know a little bit more than other moms who know nothing about photography and shooting their kids in order to be successful selling that course and coaching other moms. So my point is, to be a coach, you just have to be 1, 2, 3, or a few steps ahead of the people who need coaching from you to be able to offer at least something. Maybe you're not going to be a 6 or 7 figure coach your first year. Maybe you're coaching for a very, very affordable amount. If you're just teaching people how to paint cabinets, or you're teaching them how to lose weight in a new and effective way, or whatever it may be. But I would say you definitely owe it to yourself and owe it to the people whose message would resonate coming from you, not somebody else. Not the next door neighbor, but your voice will speak specifically to someone. So you owe it to yourself to hone in on your knowledge, to make it really digestible and transferable. And then you can do so. You can coach people who need what you have. Maybe you know how to write resumes really well, or you know how to ace job interviews, or to paint, or how to get a record contract. You can coach other people just from a bit of specialized knowledge that is, 1 or 2 steps ahead of the people that you're coaching.
Amazing. Incredible insight, and so true. I know we are coming up on time. I feel like we could do this all day, Candy. This has been fantastic. Before we go, 2 questions. The first question is a bit existential. Okay. If there's one lesson that you've learned along your business journey that you would impart to a younger version of yourself, or somebody just getting started on their own journey, what would that be?
That would be, do not wait until tomorrow. as cliche as it is, it's very true. Tomorrow is not promised. What can you do today? If you do one small thing each day that moves you even an inch closer to your dreams, in a year, you'll be 365 inches closer. You will have arrived, right? Depending upon the length of your destination. So today, do anything and everything you can that's within your grasp to move your dream forward. Don't wait. Most of us, like you brought up, because of fear, we procrastinate. Because the most universally experienced thought is not enoughness in the whole world. Everyone thinks it. The most beautiful person you've ever seen feels not enough.
Yeah.
The richest person feels not enough. So accept that we all have this thought that all of us feel not enough something. Don't let that stop you. Do it today anyway. Tomorrow's not promised.
And then keep doing it for all the days you have. I love it. Candy Tolentino joining us here on the Quinn Spinn. Huge honor. Before I let you go, where can people learn more about you online?
So nice of you. At EEAZE.com. That's EEAZE.com. And on the social, you can find me on Instagram at Candy Ease, EEAZE, Facebook, Ease Podcast, but ease.com. You can start there.
All right. Make sure you
email
do
me, say hi at candy@ease.com. Sorry, Gerard.
No, you're good. You're good. Thanks so much, Candy. This has been phenomenal. Hope to do it again sometime.
I would love to. And we need to have you on Ease too and talk about blowing your show up.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, there you have it. Again, I want to thank Candy Tolentino so much for joining us here on the Quinn Spinn today. Like I said at the top of the show, just world-class insight into the entrepreneurial journey, and just so grateful that she shared it with us here. And make sure that you check out her EEAZE podcast. It's EEAZE, wherever you listen to podcasts, just like you can check out the Quinn Spinn on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, and more. Also, find us on Instagram at Quinn Spinn Official and at undergroundmusiccollective.com, our central hub for all things independent music, creativity, community, and much more. UMC is on all the socials: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Follow the UMC 20 playlist on Spotify, 20 fresh tracks every Tuesday, plus the latest episode or episodes of this very podcast. And then also visit nashlive.live. We've got a big show tomorrow at the Cobra. It's the Mad Sugars, Floater, O'Brien, and Firebird. We've got some alternative. We got some punk. We got some pop punk. We have some hip hop. We have a little bit of everything for you tomorrow at the Cobra in Nashville, 2511 Gallatin Ave, 8 p.m. doors, 10 in advance, 12 day of show, and 21 plus tenor. I should mention that too. Revel 9's All Become going to take us out like it brought us in. I'll see you next week. Grab some muffins on the way out.
Now